272 NFL regular season games are in the books. It is time for the NFL playoffs. Stacked in the box here to recap Week 18 and the NFL regular season as a whole. Iain MacMillan, Sterling Holmes here. Sterling, you are fighting your flu game today.
Yeah, I don't really ever get sick. I just don't. Typically, I will it away. I'm just like, nah, I'm not sick. I'm good. No, I feel not great. Very congested, but we're going to power through. So I apologize for the voice. I also, my foot is a bloody stump. I'm in the new house in the middle of the night. We have a a landing going upstairs to the the second level. We have one part that's not yet carpeted or floored yet because we still have one room we need to do, and it's on that level. Long story. It's wood. It's plywood with some nails. Middle of the night. I decide I'm going to take my dog out. Dog's got to go. I'm not used to it yet. Stub my toe against the wood. Just ripped it. I'm in so much pain. At 3 o'clock, I got to call my wife. I'm just laying there as my foot's a bloody stump. Found a way. We're powering through, Iain.
You're in rough shape, but now this is the week to do it because the Chiefs are on bye, which means you also get to have a bye week as well. So I'll do the majority of the talking this time, Sterling. You get to listen
Falcons
to my
are too, though, right, Iain?
Well, no, we're not on bye. We're on the off season. Yeah, I was hoping we get a little bit further in the show before we talk with the Falcons, but yeah, it is what it is. The playoffs are set. Let's actually start with some of the results from Sunday Night Football, which was kind of being hyped up as the game of the year. Didn't quite live up to expectations in terms of excitement, but we still had a result. The Detroit Lions, which felt like the number one seed in the NFC for the entire season, are now officially the number one seed in the NFC. They have won the NFC North for the second straight year. The Minnesota Vikings, as a result of losing, will now have to hit the road to take on the LA Rams in the wild card round. And my big takeaway from last night's game, Sterling, is Sam Darnold. Can we trust Sam Darnold in a big game? Because we've seen Sam Darnold play for several teams now. The Jets, obviously, the Panthers. He was the backup in San Francisco. He now had a career resurgence with Minnesota this season. But the question all season was, at what point is Sam Darnold going to turn into a pumpkin and return to the Sam Darnold that we know, the Sam Darnold that was on the Jets, that was on the Panthers? And last night was the biggest game of the Viking season with a lot on the line, and he reverted to the old Sam Darnold. I saw a tweet. Per ESPN research, Sam Darnold has 8 overthrows tonight, the second most for a game in his career. The only other game with more was in Week 7 of 2019 when he had 12 while he was with the Jets. Can you guess what game that was? That was the I'm seeing ghosts game against the Patriots.
Oh, yeah.
Where he was sat on the sideline and the camera caught him saying, I'm seeing ghosts, which is the last thing you ever want to hear your quarterback saying. So in terms of overthrows, his worst game of his career since the famous I'm seeing ghosts game. Not good.
I don't know what to make of it. We all expected this to happen at some point, but he went the entire year without having a game like this. So Is this the outlier now?
Right.
I hope it is for him. I hope it is for the Vikings. That would be such a disappointment, such a letdown after such a magical season. One of my biggest takeaways, though, from this game in particular wasn't necessarily just Sam Darnold. Again, he was horrible in this game. Brutal. I think Kevin O'Connell is coach of the year. I think he's done a great job. I think Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson coached circles around them in this game.
I agree.
Offense, defense, didn't matter. Kevin O'Connell was confused. I'm drawing a blank. Who's the DC for the Lions? Kept showing him.
I'm drawing a blank too. I know it came on this morning. A ton of teams are interested in hiring him as a head coach, which makes sense after his
Aaron Glenn
game last night.
Aaron Glenn.
There you go.
He was ridiculous in that game. I mean, Kevin O'Connell had no idea what to do. Go for it on fourth down, kick the field goal. There was no rhyme or reason, it felt like, for what Kevin O'Connell was going to do, other than the fact that they could not get anything going once they got into the red zone. Just befuddling the Vikings. Offense, defense, again, making Kevin O'Connell second-guess almost every single decision, while Dan Campbell's doing what Dan Campbell does, aggressiveness, trying to find ways to get it done. I just think the Lions completely outcoached, again, in my opinion, the coach of the year.
And it wasn't only from a scheme perspective, it was from a perspective of like there was fourth downs where Kevin O'Connell was like, oh, we have to go for it because the Lions are going to go for it in these situations and the Lions are going to put up a ton of points. We got to keep up. So not only from a scheme standpoint, but like psychologically, Dan Campbell and the rest of the coaching staff kind of bullied the Vikings coaching staff. In a sense.
100% agree. Could not agree with that more.
But yeah, when it comes to Sam Darnold, now I don't know what to do with their playoff game against the Rams because when you look at these two teams, I do think the Vikings are the better team. I'm actually kind of lower on the Rams than a lot of other people are. But it's like, do I want to bet on the Vikings with Sam Darnold right now? Was last night an outlier game, which maybe he'll figure it out in the playoffs. Maybe that was just, an outlier bad game for him and it just came at a bad time. Or do I want to bet on the team that maybe not quite as skilled, but a team that has been in that spot plenty of times before? A lot of those players are on the Super Bowl winning team from a few years ago. So I have not decided what I'm going to do in that game. Stay tuned for the Wednesday episode when we give it our picks for wildcard round, because I have not decided which way I'm going to go. Vikings did open up as 2.5-point road favorites in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Vikings are more experienced, but I feel like I've bet against
Rams
the Vikings.
Are more experienced.
I mean, the Rams are more experienced, but I feel like I've gone against the Vikings all season long.
Yeah, right.
But they keep proving us wrong. This is the first game they proved us right, and it's against maybe the best team in the NFL in the Detroit Lions. So it's like, okay, how much do we want to take away from that one game?
Yeah.
I'll probably roll with the Vikings. I know we'll talk more about on the Wednesday show, but as of now, my initial reaction is I think the Vikings are being a little bit disrespected, or maybe it's almost like Michigan, Ohio State to an extent, where everyone's like, oh, Ohio State's done because they lost to Michigan. It was like, okay, they're done. Well, no, they just play them well. The Lions just play the Vikings well. I don't want to take too much out of one game. Let's look at the totality of what they've done this year.
I do want to say my other takeaway from last night, Alex Anzalone being back for the Lions is massive. I think he might be the most underrated linebacker in the entire NFL. He immediately made an impact and he didn't even play the whole game. Another note though, Terrion Arnold went down last night. We got to see how serious that injury is, because that's another guy in the secondary, which the Lions are, good for them that they have a bye because they need it.
Well, they might get David Montgomery back.
Yeah, but
I get it.
I know this is kind of a hot take, and people aren't going to like this, but like, who cares? I get David Monk. I get the two-headed monster is fun. I get that he has power. He's a little bit different from Jahmyr Gibbs, but I actually think they're just as good, if not better. We just give Jahmyr Gibbs the ball every time, anyways. He's the more effective running back.
Agreed, but they still give.
And he's snapped every week since David Montgomery's been out.
He's been outstanding. His speed is, 2 or 3 of those runs he had. I don't know how many other running backs in the NFL are able to get to that next level, that next gear. Yeah. Very impressive. Again, and actually Craig Reynolds has been fine. I was going to say you take away the Craig Reynolds snaps, but Craig Reynolds has been good as well. It helps when you have the best offensive line in football.
Correct. Yes, 100%. But yeah, all I'm saying is that if David Montgomery comes back, it's not like I'm like, oh, look out for the Lions. David Montgomery's back. It's like that's not
sure.
I'm much more concerned with their defense. Yeah. All right, let's rewind a little bit. Start with some early afternoon games. Sterling, there was a moment in time. It didn't last too long, maybe 10, 20 minutes, where I legitimately thought the Falcons were going to make the playoffs. The Buccaneers were losing to the Saints at halftime. The Falcons were up at halftime. And the Saints were the Buccaneers were doing some things that teams do when they get upset in big moments. There was that punt that went 14 yards. There was an interception Baker threw, but the Saints just couldn't fully, they were kicking field goals. I think it was the 14-yard punt. I don't even think they got any points on that, even though they got the ball at midfield. The Saints just didn't quite do enough to take advantage of those spots. And then, time kind of ran out on them, and the Bucks kind of turned into the Bucks in the last 10 minutes of the game. So there was, I went into yesterday being like the Falcons have no chance, but of course, in true Falcon fashion, they gave me just enough hope to get back in it and then to rip my heart out once again. They couldn't just die a painless death. They had to make it as painful as possible.
Well, you're actually lucky that the Buccaneers didn't blow it, because the Falcons did. That would have been worse. That would have
Yes,
been way
the nightmare
worse.
situation would have been if the Bucs lost and the Falcons also lost. But I do think with a minute left in the game when the Bucs game was over, because it showed the sidelines, it was like a tied game, and it showed the sidelines and they were deflated. So like, yes, they did eventually lose that game. Sure. I think if the Bucs lost, it could have been. Not saying it would have been, they still might have lost. But to me, in overtime, like that team had given up. They saw the scoreboard and just stopped.
Okay, we'll take 6 points away. Giving up 38 points in a winner-go-home game
is abysmal.
That's
the Falcons need to listen. There's a lot of teams that are in much worse situations heading into this offseason than the Falcons. So like, I'm not going to be upset, but I mean, Michael Penix looks like the guy. He looks like the guy. He's fantastic. Bijan Robinson, Drake London. I retweeted a tweet this morning. First time Falcons are first team in NFL history with a 300-yard passer, 175-yard receiver, and 150-yard rusher, each under the age of 25 in the same game. So like, our offense is unbelievable.
I'm surprised
our
Michael
defense
Penix
needs
is
to
under
be
25.
What's that?
Of all the guys you named, I'm surprised Michael Penix is the guy under 25.
True. I think he might be the oldest. The Falcons need to completely wipe clean their defense. They need to fire Jimmy Lake. They need to make a couple of key re-signings. The last thing I'll talk about the Falcons, because we're not going to talk about them in the playoffs. I tweeted out a to-do list. They got to fire Jimmy Lake, find a new DC. They need to draft a need instead of the best skill player available, like they've done now 5 years in a row, which has turned into a good result. But draft a pass rusher, please. Draft a second corner. Do something. Do not draft it. Like, watch them take another quarterback here, like 15th overall. They also need to re-sign Justin Simmons and Drew Dahlman. Would be huge. If they can do those 4 things, they're going to be a contender next year. They got to revamp that defense because that defense is bad. You can't give up that many points to the Panthers.
I know
you can't give up that many points to the Panthers. Bryce Young look like an NFL MVP.
As a joke, I tweeted at you and said, yeah, the Falcons will be good next year if they get 9 new defensive starters.
Yeah.
I was being facetious, but only slightly hyperbolic. It's about 4 guys. I mean, they need about 4 or 5 new starters defensively. Simmons stays. Your CB1 stays.
Yeah. We need a CB2 and we need a pass rusher.
Grady Jarrett stays.
Yeah. Which Grady Jarrett's under contract. So
Matthew Judon is a. I mean,
I'll
I tried telling you.
We'll bring him back if we can, get a decent price on him. Because I don't hate Judon. It's just he's probably not worth. He's probably going to ask more than what he's worth. So, pay Justin Simmons. Get a pass rusher. Get a CB2 and get a new defense corner. Jimmy Lake's a joke.
Yeah.
And if we can do that, we'll be all right next season. At least, I mean, like I said, there are so many more teams that are in a worse spot this offseason. So, like, I'm not going to complain too bad. Like, imagine being a Jaguars fan, a Jets fan, a Giants fan. Like, there's some fan bases in a bad spot right now.
Jaguars is the worst, I think, because not only did you fire Doug Peterson, who I think is a fine head coach, by the way. It wasn't going to work in Jacksonville. I think he's a fine head coach. You kept Trent Baalke. That's the issue. What's been the consistent issue in Jacksonville? Trent Baalke. I don't understand how he keeps keeping his job. It blows my mind.
Yeah. Do you have any comments about the Chiefs, who, yes, they played all backups, but they did get shut out?
Yeah. The backup offensive lineman, yikes. DJ Humphries. I don't know if I want to start him at left tackle come playoffs. I might just keep Joe Thuney at left tackle. One thing we found out is the Chiefs definitely know who their starters versus their backups are. We know that for sure. They got that right. Some of the starters are secondary players who are going to play in the playoffs. They got torched. Like Brian Cook, Shamari Connor, Najee Johnson, who I don't think is going to play at all anymore. I mean, that was just a brutal performance. I get it. No pass rush, all that stuff. A lot of different moving parts. They were stuck on the tarmac in Kansas City because they couldn't leave for an absurd amount of time. So there were some issues underlying going into this game, but what a brutal performance overall. Very disappointing from some players that I wanted to see for the future as well. Like, they can't re-sign everyone, right? I wanted to see Cam Jones do something. I wanted to see some of the offensive linemen step up and do something. It was just brutal all around.
Yeah, unfortunately, there were some possibilities for some fun results yesterday, and we didn't get any. Would have been fun to see the Bengals get in. That wasn't even close. And then, I mean, other people might not have thought it, but I thought it would have been fun if the Falcons snuck in. Like, there would have been some potential surprising results, which really would have shaken things up, and none of them happened, which kind of sucks.
But by the way, Bengals fans who are like saying the Chiefs sold that game, or why didn't they play their starters? Because they were 15-1.
Right,
the one seed's already wrapped up. That's the you think they're scared of the 9-8 Bengals? That means they have to beat Buffalo.
They probably weren't even thinking about that. Why would they?
Yeah, Bengals fans are I don't know how they walk and chew gum, man. Yeah. I don't know how they wake up in the morning and tie. They must have Velcro for shoes because they can't tie them. It blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go that far, but Bengals fans should instead be concerned about how you guys lost 16-10 to the Patriots in week 1. You should be more concerned about how you lost 40. You let the Steelers score 44 points against you at the start of this month.
But 10P Kids is good in the chat. 10P Kids is the most rational Bengals fan I know. 10P Kids. Yes, I'm with you. Well, it's not just the irrational 1%. It's like some of the bigger Bengals Twitter accounts. It's like the Zim guy. It's like the Goodberry dude. I'm just sitting here going, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? Don't go 1-5 to start the season. Don't tweet out, wait until Joe Burrow's healthy. They won't go 9-8 when he's healthy. They went 9-8 with Joe Burrow, just how they did with Jake Browning. And again, I feel for the rational fans. I actually do, because the Bengals are not in a great spot going forward. They have to figure out what to do with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson, all these guys. Like, and again, TP Kids, I in the chat, I actually do appreciate you because I actually really enjoy talking with some Bengals fans because I think there's a lot of similarities between the Chiefs before they started their dynasty and just Bengals fans in general. I feel for a lot of you guys. 10P, I feel for you. Love to grab a beer with you sometime. But again, yeah, as you're saying, like Goodberry, like those major Bengals accounts that have such a massive following just say these irrational things. And instead of focusing on starting off 1-5, or that I think Zach Taylor's a bad head coach. Like, there are real underlying issues with Cincinnati, but no one ever talks about it. Everyone wants to talk about the playoff win 3 years ago. I think the Bengals could be a really good, fun story. They could be a really enjoyable team. But they have to figure out these cracks in the foundation before the foundation ruins the house.
Are the Falcons and Bengals the same team now? Both electric offenses, terrible defenses, questionable head coach.
I think the Bengals have way more upside because I think Joe Burrow is I think Joe Burrow is better than Michael Penix.
Well, I think Bijan Robinson's better than Chase Brown.
Of course, but I think Jamar is light years better than Drake London.
They're not literally identical, but it's kind of the same thing. They both missed the playoffs by a game. They both have electric offenses, put up a ton of points in several games, and their defense event is what let them down.
Yeah, and I think the T. Higgins question, though, is the hardest one for Cincy. As Jalen says, don't pay T. Higgins. He's injury prone. Well, when he's healthy and he's on the field, he is such a game changer. I mean, their offense looks night and day different. When T. Higgins is out there playing, it's ridiculous how high their upside is. He just is so injured. I don't know how Cincinnati finds a way to keep those guys, him and Jamar, and then again Trey. I mean, they legitimately had an MVP candidate, Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and a Triple Crown winner at wide receiver and missed the playoffs. It's all depth. It's ownership, it's GM, it's head coach. That just cannot happen.
I got a question that happened yesterday that I haven't seen really anyone talk about it. And to me, I don't think it was the right move. But the Los Angeles Rams decided to rest the large majority of their starters when they could still improve their seeding. Now, as a result of losing to the Seahawks, now, to be fair, they had a chance to win the game and Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't deliver. So they almost won it with their backups. But now, instead of hosting the Commanders as a 3 seed, they now host the Vikings as a 4 seed. Now, there's an argument to be made. There's probably not a huge difference between the Vikings and Commanders, but there is a small difference that does affect home field advantage later on in the playoffs. I mean, it's something crazy would have to happen, but I mean, if you do get a Buccaneers-Rams NFC championship, which is kind of crazy, but it certainly could happen. Now the Rams you have to go to Tampa Bay instead of hosting it. I don't think personally that the Rams should have rested their starters. Maybe one or two, depending on I'm not in the locker room. Maybe Matt Stafford is nursing a little bit of a nagging injury. But completely resting all your starters when you do still have something to play for is an interesting strategy, considering there are some teams, Lions last week against the 49ers, who had nothing to play for but still played all their starters.
Yeah,
And just give me a second. I gotta let my cat out of the room. She's crying.
Yeah, you're good. I was a little confused by this as well. I guess because Matt Stafford feels like he's perpetually nursing some sort of injury. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Tyler Higbee. They've been a fairly injured team just in general over the past couple of seasons. Their thought process probably is, we are a playoff tested team in the past, at least with a lot of these guys. It doesn't matter as much where we are as long as that we're in the dance and as long as we're healthy. I think there's multiple ways of doing this, but they treated it like a legit preseason game where they just said, no, we're done. We're not gonna worry about it. I don't hate the strategy personally. I don't hate it because I think Commanders and Vikings, you know my thoughts. I think the Vikings are a little underrated at this point, but I think the Commanders are a really good team as well. I don't know. I don't have a huge issue with it, I guess. I think it actually, in some instances, makes some sense. Being healthy is the number one priority when heading into the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, is 1 week off going to fix all these injuries, though? I mean, everyone has lingering injuries at this point in the NFL season.
Fixed Travis Kelce last year for the Chiefs.
Yeah. Hunter said Rams are kind of an old beat up team, and I think Sean McVay even said Puka Nacua plays like he's a Mack truck, like he's just puts himself in situations where he's going to get hurt, because that's the way he plays. So I get it. But I do think if there's any way you can improve your playoff seeding whatsoever, I think you have to kind of go for it. George, Vikings and Commanders are kind of frauds. I don't think they're frauds. I think they're rightfully evaluated. I don't think anyone's considering either of those teams a real Super Bowl contender. Now they could. I don't think anyone's crowning those teams though. I think they're rightfully evaluated.
Yeah, I would agree, actually.
And you know me, I love calling a team fraud.
Here we go. Are the Chiefs still frauds in your mind, Iain?
Yes, in the sense that they are the number one seed in the AFC, but they are nowhere close to being the best team in the AFC. Now, they have played much better in week 15, 16, 17, which does make me nervous. I do really like that the Chargers capture the 5th seed, because if the Bills, Ravens win and the Chargers win, the Chargers would give the Chiefs a much tougher game, and you would agree with that, than the Texans or Steelers. So me guaranteeing they lose in their first playoff game has a glimmer of hope now that it could be Los Angeles. We'll see. Let's hope Houston or Steelers don't win.
I was so mad watching that Steelers game. Because if the Steelers won, they're the 5 seed. Yeah, and I don't think they're very good. I could not watch 17 Steelers games. I couldn't do it. I know they're not the worst team in the NFL. I get they're a playoff team.
Yeah.
That's just so unfun to watch.
Just the Steelers have been the same team now every year for 6 seasons, it feels like.
But they lose in the first round of the playoffs. They never get a good draft pick.
They start off hot. They win a lot of surprising games early in the season, the first half of the season. Then people are like, oh, is this team legitimate? Watch out for the Steelers. And then they crap their pants in the last 4 or 5 weeks, but it doesn't matter because they've won enough games, stumbling in the playoffs, and then lose by 20 in the first round. It's been like this for 6 straight years. It's crazy.
And I don't, by the way, George Pickens, woof. George Pickens sold. Seriously, if he makes any of those catches, it's they probably win. Yet he's too busy complaining with fans and arguing with everyone else. Zero accountability. Yeah, man, I don't know what Pittsburgh does going forward. Do you fire Mike Tomlin?
No.
If they lose first round, he's going to be he's the number one coach on the free agent market if that's the case.
I think it's a GM issue because he's not getting good players to play with. The coach. I don't know who. I'm not deep into the Steelers front office. Who's their GM? Their offense, they haven't had good players on that offense for years.
Well, I think they have decent players offensively. They just don't have a quarterback. They have players. Defensively and offensively, I think they have players. It's the quarterback.
George Pickens is a decent receiver. Najee Harris isn't good. Although they played Najee Harris. Like, why do they keep playing Najee Harris? Jaylen Warren is by far the better running back, and they continue to give Najee Harris the majority of snaps.
So I said that. I typically I would agree with you because I said the same thing for like 2.5 years. Najee does do a great job of falling forward. I know it's such a small thing, but Najee does a great job of some contact balance work, of picking up the tough yards. I will grant him that. Jaylen Warren, that was much more explosive. But yeah, I think it comes down to Russell Wilson looks like now the Denver Russell Wilson. And now that Justin Fields benching looks a little more questionable than it did earlier on in the year when Russ turned back into old Russ throwing those moon balls.
Jalen says, I think if the Chiefs play their A game, the Eagles are the only team that can compete with them. I strongly disagree.
I think Buffalo can too. I think Detroit can as well.
I think Baltimore's the best team in the NFL right now.
That's just wild. I don't understand. I will never understand this Baltimore love. I just will not get it. They're very good at when they get up in games, and they are very good at blowing out bad teams. Yes, they love to leave Lamar in to get some stats late in the game.
I mean, they blew out Buffalo this season.
They love stat padding.
I wasn't going to say it. We're going to say it. They lead the NFL in net yards per play.
Yeah, because they leave their starters in and throwing the football in fourth down up 21.
I would power rank right now. Ravens number 1, Eagles number 2, Lions number 3, Bills number 4, Chiefs number 5.
That's just absurd.
I don't think it's that. Like, listen, there's sometimes I say some hot takes, but I honestly don't think that's that hot of a take.
The hottest part of that is having the Ravens won. Like, I know you're trying to get a rise by having the Chiefs 5th. Fine.
I'm not, though. I think the Ravens generous.
Won. The generous. Oh, yeah. Put the Commanders above them, pal.
Yeah, but the only reason someone would rank the Chiefs in the top 3 is because they've won back-to-back Super Bowls. Like, if you look at this season under a microscope and you like just forget the last 2 years, the Chiefs are the 5th best team.
Fine, but you can't forget that.
I think you can, though.
The Chiefs are peaking at the right time, while the Ravens, every single year come playoff time, have to rely on Lamar to throw, and every time he does, he crumbles. Every single year I've said, it's different this year. It's different. Lamar's different. He's going to figure it out. I always liken it to Andy Reid. Andy Reid was known as a guy, very good player, very good head coach, could never win the big one. Lamar so far has been known as a very good player, can't win the big one. Until you do, right? So I kept being in this mindset. I kind of still am to an extent. Once Lamar wins one, the floodgates will potentially open for him.
Right.
But you got to win that one. And he keeps crumbling in the playoffs. Crumbling. Okay? You got to do it at some point. You got to do it.
And maybe this is the year. Xander Schauffele, year after year, would crumble at the majors. This year, he finally won. And then he did, and then he won another one 2 majors later.
That's great. This is not golf.
I still think it's the Ravens. And the Ravens do have the best odds of the teams that don't have a bye to win the Super Bowl. Now, that probably has something to do with the fact they also have the easiest matchup in the first round. So, yeah, we'll see. Chiefs are, unfortunately, I'm not going to deny that. Chiefs are playing their best football right now, previous to Week 18. Which wild card game, Sterling, are you looking forward to the most?
Oh,
hold on. Timeout. 30-second timeout before we get to that. Jalen Butler, I would argue the Chiefs have the best offense other than the Eagles. By what metric, Jalen? By what metric? Points per game, yards per game, EPA, success rate. By what metrics, Jalen, do the Chiefs have the second best offense in the NFL? The eye test?
Well, if you look at the last couple of weeks, I'm not going to say they are because I think they're not. I think
better
Eagles
offense
are up
than
there.
Lions?
The
What
Lions
are we talking
are up there.
about?
I think Buffalo's up there.
Right. The argument for the Chiefs is that they're a complete team. A complete
Correct.
team with Super Bowl experience, yes.
Correct. I do think the offense, though, is starting to trend up, and it's going to surprise people in the playoffs. I think that's what they've been.
And I won't even.
I think it's going to surprise people in the playoffs because they've not scored 30 points in a single game yet this regular season.
Right, which is crazy to say they have the second best offense, but they haven't scored more than 30 points. They scored 30 points once.
I think they will in the playoffs.
Okay.
I really do.
Yeah, forget the metric. You can't. This is the argument I have with people all the time. You can't just forget the metrics. You can't just be like, yeah, forget math. Forget that. What you forget 1 + 1 = 2. That doesn't actually mean anything. In my opinion, 1 + 1 = 4. So that's what I'm going to think about. That's silly.
So the Falcons really won like 19 games according to your metrics.
No, by my metrics, no. By the metrics, the Falcons were an average team this year, maybe slightly above average. I'm not going to make the argument the Falcons are a good team. They weren't going to win the Super Bowl if they made the playoffs, but it would have been fun. All right, which wildcard game are you looking forward to the most?
In the AFC, I think Ravens-Steelers.
Oh, really? That's one who cares?
The divisional.
Yeah, but
like 3 times. I know. Normally I would say this, ooh, what a game. We talked about how much I don't believe in the Steelers, but only because of this matchup. Only reason why. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be physical. If you think that the Ravens have a chance to win the Super Bowl, they have to get up early and not play that grinded out NFC North style of football. If that's the case, they're going to be so banged up heading into the upcoming week. They can't. They have to win this game and get up early. If you let the Steelers play their game and play extremely physical, good luck. Good luck. That's more or less what I'm looking forward to in this game. I think the Ravens win. But that's my point, is this could be a game that has long-lasting effects because of the physicality of Pittsburgh.
Are the Steelers that much of a physical team, though? Or is that just like, do we just say that because like they always were?
I think they still are.
Okay. I don't know.
I mean, their defensive line definitely is. The way they hit definitely is. Beanie Bishop is so fun to watch. TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward's having a ridiculous year. I mean, ridiculous. Herbig, Hurtig, Highsmith, Minka Fitzpatrick.
I like it. Put Justin Fields back in.
Benny Bishop is a playmaker back there in the secondary. He's like 5'7", intercepting. It feels like every time I watch the Steelers play a game, he has an interception. Just ridiculous. As much as I don't like George Pickens, he's still physical. Darnell Washington, who's like 6'7", almost 3 Bills playing tight end, physical as hell. But yeah, in the NFC, Hunter, I'm with you. Bucs Commanders was my NFC one to watch. That's should be the most fun to watch.
Yeah, I guess that's why they put it on Sunday Night Football. I'm looking forward to Eagles. I wish Eagles Packers was Sunday Night Football. Maybe it's because I don't like the Bucs because they're an NFC South team, and the Commanders because the Bucs Commanders are the 2 teams that just broke my heart the last 2 weeks. So I actually don't want to see them in the playoffs. But Packers Eagles to me is the best game.
Probably best game, yeah. If you're looking for like a fun game, Bucs Commanders probably.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Like as far as fun in terms of just like an offensive shootout?
What game has the highest potential of being 35-34? Probably yeah. Bucs Commanders. Although again, the Eagles Packers should be so much fun to watch. That should be more fun in a different way. I think both those 2 teams are Super Bowl contenders. I don't really think the Bucs and Commanders are.
Yeah, there we go, Jalen. We can agree on that. Eagles, Packers. There we go. See, we can find some common ground. Yeah, I think I am soured by the fact like the Buccaneers and Commanders just broke my heart the last 2 weeks, and the Bucs are like I'm gonna feel like that should be the Falcons in that game. I know like it shouldn't, but it should. So that's gonna be a hard watch for me personally. I don't care about Ravens Steelers. I think Ravens win that game by 50 points. Like I don't care. And I actually don't like it when divisional teams play in the playoffs. Because it's like, I want to see new matchups. I want to see like some exciting things we haven't seen before. We've seen these 2 teams play twice already. We know the Ravens are the better team.
And you're probably going to see the Chiefs play the Chargers 3 times.
Yeah, but that's more exciting because I want the Chiefs to lose.
Hater.
What else do we got in the first round? Broncos, Bills. I think if there's going to be a big upset this week, I think it might be the Broncos.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But with the way the Broncos are playing, I don't know how much to take away from that last game. I really don't, because the Chiefs, the Chiefs did not want to be there. They didn't care. All backups. But Bo Nix, my goodness, they have a lot of wide receivers that are not great on Denver, but there are a lot of really good players on Denver. Like Cortland Sutton is one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL. Vele has been really good. They have 3 different running backs they throw at you. None are great. All are serviceable. Audric Estime is looking pretty good as a rookie. Javonte Williams has now found his role almost as a pass catcher, it feels like at times. Jaleel McLaughlin's the more explosive one. Offensive line-wise, they're pretty good. Bo Nix just looks like he's the real deal. He's played in relatively big games in college. Will that translate to the NFL? Defensively, they're finding their footing now, right? They were a little hit and miss at times this year, but defensively now they're starting to really find themselves. Surtain's the best cornerback in football. Their defensive line, again, without having any massive name dudes, they have the most sacks in the NFL? Is that what it is? Without having any sort of, household name? The Broncos are impressive. I don't think they upset the Bills, but you're right. That could be a good matchup for Denver.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they will either. I'm just saying, like, if there were to be one big upset, that's the one that wouldn't completely shock me, because I got a lot of issues with the Bills' defense. Josh Allen and the offense has kind of been hiding this bad defense. Bills are 21st in opponent yards per play. They're 12th in opponent EPA per play, 16th in opponent success rate. So they are an average to below average defense by just those 3 metrics, obviously, more than just those go into it. But then obviously the Broncos defense, second, first, second in those 3 categories. So like there's no doubting, you can't argue which team has the better defense, and it's not even close. The Broncos have the better defense. So Josh Allen's got to bring his A game.
Yeah, I mean, they probably win if he plays his B- game, right?
Yeah, and I will say another thing is Denver does play significantly worse on the road this season. A lot of their home away splits are not great.
Mile high, baby.
Yeah. Speaking of Josh Allen, NFL MVP, it is down to Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Heading into the late slate of games yesterday, Josh Allen was still about a minus 230 favorite, about a 74% implied probability to be the NFL MVP. Do you agree with that?
I do. I get the stats. I do. I get Lamar has those numbers. But you also know my thoughts on some of the times in the fourth quarter, late in the game, they'll be up a lot. They stat pad a little bit. I firmly believe that they do that with Lamar. It's not taking anything away. With that. I'm not taking anything away from Lamar. I think he is one of one. He has paved his own path in the NFL. He is deserving of those previous MVPs. In almost any other year, I would say Lamar is the MVP this year. But what Josh Allen has done with his Buffalo team, to me, is more important. If you would have switched those 2 players, I think Josh Allen wins more games with Baltimore. You put Lamar on this Buffalo teams, I think they lose more games. I think it's that simple. Again, the teams are built for their style of play, all that stuff. I understand that. But what Josh Allen has done with a team that was supposed to take a step back, that lost but some of their major weapons, with a defense that does really nothing well in Buffalo. Josh Allen, if you watch the games, to me, Josh Allen is the catalyst that makes that offense go, that makes that team go. I mean, do you think if you put Lamar on Buffalo, they win, was it 14 games, 13 games?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. That's such a tough question because there are a lot of other things. Trevor, what are you going to do? Did the Falcons make playoffs? No, they didn't make the playoffs. We talked about that. What are you talking about the Falcons? No, but there is a lot more that goes into a team winning a game more than just the quarterback.
Agreed. But we all agree they were supposed to take a step back this year. Who was the better head coach?
Yeah.
Baltimore.
Yeah. John Harbaugh is the better coach. I think I would say, yeah.
Who has better playmakers? Baltimore.
Yeah.
Who has the better offensive line? Baltimore.
Is that true? I don't know.
I would say it's true. I personally believe they have a better offensive line than Buffalo.
I don't know if that's
Buffalo's
true,
is not bad. Deion Dawkins is a stud. I'm just saying from all five. If you count all five, I'd probably lean Baltimore.
I'm looking at Lamar's because you were talking about Lamar's stat pads. I'm looking at some of his, these are advanced metrics and they don't tell the whole story. But I am looking at some now. If you take out of garbage time, so if you take out all the stats that are accumulated when a team has a win probability of 10% or less or 90% or more, Lamar Jackson's still up like top 2.
He's had a ridiculous year. He's been incredible. I don't disagree with that. I'm not arguing with the premise that Lamar could be MVP. But you asked my thoughts, and my thoughts are that Josh Allen's the MVP. I think he's done more with less.
I'm split. I will agree with either player winning the award.
Well, and here's
I do think voter fatigue comes into play a little bit.
Either wins matter or they don't. If wins don't matter, then I think Joe Burrow. Seriously, if wins don't matter, then Joe Burrow's really up there.
But isn't there an answer somewhere in the middle where it's like wins aren't everything, but they're something? Like you got to make the playoffs.
I would agree with that. But to me, I think
if Chiefs beat the Broncos and Bengals get in the 7th seed, is Joe Burrow MVP?
No, it's still Josh.
Yeah. All right.
Again, Josh Allen's throwing to Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakur, now Amari Cooper. Right, I'll give him that. Amari Cooper's now there. Dalton Kincaid's a really good tight end, but
he missed a lot of games too.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson did kind of have a chance to really make a strong case against Cleveland, and he didn't really. He played well. He threw 2 touchdowns, no picks, but 50% completion percentage, 217 yards. Did have 63 yards on the ground, but I thought Lamar Jackson, if he would have come out and really a lot of that was kind of garbage time, 4th quarter, 2 touchdowns. Yeah. But if he would have come out in like first half against the Browns and just like crushed him and steamrolled him, then I think there would have been a very strong case. But then Josh Allen had the downside of...
When did those touchdowns come for Lamar?
Well, they weren't actually the 2 4th quarter touchdowns were Derrick Henry. So they first half.
Okay.
Josh Allen, unfortunately, only played 1 snap, and it was in a non-standalone game and meaningless. So Josh Allen didn't really get a chance to put his final stamp on his MVP resume. So I don't know. I'm 50-50. No matter who wins, I will agree with it, unless they just make Saquon Barkley MVP. Then that's crazy. Last thing we'll talk about, just really quick, Pro Bowl. I didn't even see who made it for the Chiefs. Any thoughts on Pro Bowl selections for the Chiefs?
For the Chiefs, it's fine. I think they, for the most part, got it right. For the most part, there's always going to be some of those things you look at and you're like, how did he not, or how did he? You got to look at everyone in the NFL, right? There is a little bit of a popularity contest situation going on, if we're being honest. All 3 interior offensive linemen for the Chiefs made it, which is fair. No tackles made it, definitely fair. No Patrick, which I think is fair. Patrick was not the best or top 3 AFC quarterback this year. I'm unbiased enough to say that Lamar, Josh, and Joe had better seasons offensively, numbers-wise. Will it matter come playoff time? I don't think so. But as far as statistically speaking, those 3 deserved it. Travis Kelce getting it at first was questionable to me until I looked it up. I don't know why you're shaking your head like that.
Well, the Swifties got him in.
Oh, that's fine. But it wasn't like he was this bum of a year.
No,
he had not. No. Well, that's what I think is so funny is this is by far his worst year in the NFL, by far. He's 3rd in the AFC in yards receiving, and he has 97 catches.
I actually agree with that. Yeah, people are overblowing how people are saying he's trash now. He's actually had a pretty good year, compared to other tight ends.
This is what's so funny is his worst year is a lot of times guys' best years. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be the elite tight end's best years. But if you are an average or good tight end and you had a year like this, you'd be getting talked about wow, what a year is he? Crazy year for a tight end. It's just the expectations that Travis Kelce has put on himself because of how good he has been in the past. If he was left off for Jonnu Smith, sure.
Yeah, I would have put Jonnu Smith in over him. But yeah, he was probably number 3.
Like I don't have a big gripe with that. Trent McDuffie not making it, not a big gripe. Like,
Right.
would you, if you would have made it? PFF has him as the second best cornerback in all of football. Okay, he probably should have made it. But there are a lot of really good corners, especially in the AFC. I'm not going to sit here and try and argue over every little one because it's a losing argument.
Yeah.
You're just not going to win. There are other snubs in the NFL that Brian Thomas not making Pro Bowl is crazy, according to 10P Kids, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like, yeah. I don't know. I don't have a whole bunch of super strong thoughts one way or the other. I think for the most part, they got it relatively right. Relatively.
Yeah, and Hunter said a lot of snubs end up getting in anyways. I mean, remember when it was Tyler Huntley, wasn't it, a few years ago, made it in? He played like 2 games and he somehow made it to the Pro Bowl because so many guys dropped out. So the Pro Bowl really doesn't actually matter as much as it used to. I mean, teams that make the players who are in the Super Bowl can't go to it. All Pro is what matters.
All Pro is what matters.
So I think we should, as a society, stop overreacting to Pro Bowl selections and start caring about All Pro. With that being said, Jesse Bates not getting it was a disgrace. Josh Jacobs over Bijan Robinson is crazy.
I don't know, man. Josh Jacobs had a really good year.
Didn't Bijan like second amongst all running backs in scrimmage yards?
Sure. I'm not arguing with just the numbers, but if you're talking about impact, Josh Jacobs had a ridiculous impact on the Green Bay Packers this year. How many games did Jordan Love miss?
A couple.
And Josh Jacobs was the guy. I mean, Josh Jacobs was... How many touchdowns did Jacobs have? I mean, it was not historic, obviously. It wasn't,
he had 15. He had one more than Bijan.
That's it? Only 15? He had a lot at the end of the year. Maybe that's why I'm so caught up on...
16 if you count a receiving touchdown.
Yeah. I guess he just had so many at the very end of the year. Look at the end of the year numbers. There you go. From what week is that? He had 3 against San Fran, then 1, then 3, then 1, then 1, then 1, then 1. He scored a touchdown in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight games. He scored a touchdown, and he had, 12 touchdowns in 8 games to end the year?
216 fewer yards from scrimmage. Only averaged 4.4 yards per carry, which is decent, but it's not like mind-blowing. Bijan averaged 4.8 yards per carry. Receiving yards, he had almost 100 fewer receiving yards than Bijan. He had 25 fewer receptions.
I do think it is, the older I've gotten, the more sounds weird, the more I've almost pushed back on some of the stat numbers, or at least the total numbers. Because you have no idea how often a guy sits out. Against the Saints, he sat out the entire second half.
You can look at yards per carry.
Sure, 100% you can. And to an extent, I'm with you with more of those and some of the efficiency numbers, which, EPA, DVOA, all of those numbers. I've gotten more into that than just the total overall numbers. Because kind of like the Lamar, Josh Allen debate. How many times is a guy playing in the third and fourth quarter? Josh Jacobs, that Saints game, I only know because I for fantasy football purposes, he sat out the entire second half of that game. That's a whole half against the worst defense he was going to face all year long. Ain't no stat padding going on there.
I'm actually more upset about Jesse Bates, to be honest.
Who are the safeties that made it in the NFC?
Let me see here. Kirby Joseph didn't make it either, which is
Kirby Joseph has been ridiculous for Detroit.
Yeah. Xavier McKinney for the Packers, which Budda Baker for the Cardinals is insane. That's name recognition only. Budda Baker's not a Pro Bowler this year. And then Brian Branch for the Lions.
I think Kirby Joseph deserved it over Brian Branch.
Yeah. And Jesse Bates definitely deserved it over Budda Baker's. Fine.
Again, this is just straight. I don't have any analytics, any stats in front of me. I watched a good amount of Cardinals games. Okay.
Yep.
I thought Budda Baker always flashed. You looked at that defense, you're like, wow, this defense is devoid of talent. But Budda Baker's out there flying around making plays. I get it, but Budda Baker, I think, is an incredible player. So,
according to PFF, he's 15th ranked safety this year.
Okay. I mean, I thought he had a really good year. Again, that's all anecdotal. That's all me. The games that I watched, I didn't watch every Cardinals game. I watched a lot. And Budda Baker was a lot of times the best player on the field, offense or defense, many a time.
All right, that does it for the show. We'll be back Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, to give out our wild card weekend preview and picks. Have they dropped the super? I think they've dropped the super. I have not heard anyone call it Super Wild Card Weekend. Have you heard Super Wild Card Weekend? It was that for like 3 years.
Yeah, which was dumb. Why do they call it that?
I think they've dropped it.
It should just be Wild Card. Let me see if they have it.
No, I don't see it anywhere on NFL.com.
Whoa. Okay, couple of just... Let's talk about this for like 2 minutes, okay? To end up the show.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So we talked about we talked about Peterson being fired and them retaining Trent Baalke, the GM, which we all agree is dumb.
Yeah.
I would have done the opposite, if anything. Either fire both or have done the opposite.
Sure.
Giants are keeping Schoen and Daboll.
Yeah.
I would have maybe kept Daboll, but I think Daboll is one of those guys who's great as an OC, and maybe that's where he tops out, right? I think he's a great OC. Head coach might be a little too much.
How many years of grace does winning coach of the year get you?
Typically only a year. Seriously.
Really? I would. I like them keeping Daboll. I think that's the right move.
I think Daboll's a good head coach, or is a good coach. I don't know about head coach. I think he's a great OC, but I think the Giants, that needs to sever. I think at some point, I think they should have fired Schoen as well as Daboll. I would have been fine with them. Again, I almost think the Schoen would have been the guy I would have moved away from.
I agree with that.
The Pats firing Gerard Mayo. Any thoughts on Mayo getting fired by New England?
I am curious if whether or not Robert Kraft told him to lose that game so they have the first overall pick, and then Mayo said, "Screw you, I'm going to win it anyways." And then because he didn't even let him leave the stadium. He fired him, which to me sounds like an emotional move. Because if you plan on firing a guy, you fire him the next day. You don't fire him the moment he steps off the field. That's kind of crazy. So I wonder if Robert Kraft was like, "Can you please lose this game?" And Mayo was like, "No, I'm going to go win it." And then he did.
The only reason you fire Mayo, in my opinion, is if you have someone you don't want to lose as a coach in free agency.
Mike Vrabel.
Right,
correct.
But which again, I don't understand why they wouldn't have just hired him originally. They had an opportunity last year. I don't think Mayo did a great job, but also he's a first-year head coach. You knew they were going to be growing pains with a bad roster.
I didn't like Mayo in the media. The Mayo just straight up lied about things this year to the media. A couple games ago, he said that he was going to bench Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson was going to start. Didn't happen. Said Drake May was going to play the full game last week. Didn't happen. You can't just, and I'm sure Robert Kraft doesn't care about that, but as a member of the media, you can't just lie. You can talk around it. You can, not, give a full answer, but you can't just be like, no, this guy will not be starting. And then 2 hours later he starts.
I mean, things happen. That's not going to bother me as much as, and again, I'm in the media here. But how many times?
It bothers me from a betting standpoint because that really screws bettors.
That's fair.
Because I know guys who bet into big money. I know pro bettors and Antonio Gibson did end up hitting the over on his rushing yards in that game. But if the NFL is going to get in bed with sports betting, you can't have coaches straight up lie to the media hours before the game starts about who's going to play and who's not. It's the same thing as not having a player on an injury report and then all of a sudden he doesn't play. The Falcons got in trouble for that last year with Bijan Robinson. If you're going to be in bed with sports betting, you can't do that.
Agreed. From the betting side, agreed.
Yeah.
I'm just a little surprised by that, I guess. I thought Mayo was, if you're going to hire him originally, you got to give him more than 1 year. They didn't. That, again, tells me they have someone they want already.
Yeah. And I do think maybe they're going to fire him anyways, but I think the fact they did it at the stadium was
weird.
It's probably because he won the game.
Two last ones here. Tyreek Hill sitting in the fourth quarter talking about wanting to leave Miami after 2 days ago or a couple days ago, saying Happy New Year's to everyone, especially the Chiefs or whatever that tweet was. He signed a contract extension in Miami. I don't understand him. You didn't have to leave. Can't just he wanted the money and now he wants both. I don't get players sometimes.
I mean, I feel like this happens to receivers. Like receivers it's a stereotype, but it's true. The divas of the league. And it happens every single year. I mean, didn't even Tyreek Hill, like in his last year at Kansas City, complain he wasn't getting enough targets, but he like set a franchise record for most targets in a season. Like
correct.
These receivers, like they just, and like there's no shame to it. There's no self-awareness. Like they want to not only get like 200 targets a season, they also want to be on a team that's going to win the Super Bowl and also being paid the most in the entire NFL. Like you can't have literally everything.
Correct.
You either like, especially as a receiver, like you cannot be on a championship team and also be the highest paid receiver because that's just not going to happen. Teams can't win Super Bowls based on a good receiver, and the Chiefs have proven that. You can actually do the opposite. You can win Super Bowls without a top receiver.
The Lions might be one of the correct, but the Lions are might prove that at least a little bit fluky with Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's not the highest, but he's up there.
Yeah.
But
they got some other positions who are on rookie cheap deals, though.
100%. Right. Brad Holmes has done a great job as GM. He's been outstanding.
Yeah. But, I mean, what we're seeing with Tyreek Hill, we've seen now. I feel like every year there's a receiver doing that.
Every single year. All right, final one here. I think this is crazy. Bengals firing DC and Arumo after 6 seasons. I know the Bengals defense was horrible. Horrible. I've ripped in the Bengals defense all season long. Lou Anarumo is a damn good head coach. Not head coach, sorry. Defensive coordinator. That guy is getting picked up by some team. Lou Anarumo is, I think, one of the better game planning DCs in the NFL. He just had no talent outside of Trey Hendrickson. Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe Bengals fans, 10P kids, you can chime in here. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I always thought Lou Anarumo was a good DC. That was surprising to me.
The Chiefs are just now, as of 10:25 a.m. Eastern, boarding the buses to head to the airport in Denver.
Oh, dude, KC, it's crazy here. We have my house. Look out, 8+ inches of snow here.
Crazy.
That's wild.
And because it's bad fire, zero talent in defense, so he agrees with you.
We agree. Yeah.
Look at you, Chiefs fan, Bengals fan.
Hey, I respect players like that. I respect Hendrickson. I respect Lou Anarumo. He's a great DC.
Yeah, he was a scapegoat. Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, unfortunately. All right. Anything else?
I'm good. I'm hopefully gonna feel better Wednesday.
Yes. All right, we'll be back. Excuse me. I was up at 6 a.m. this morning. I'm in rough shape. I apologize for yawning there. All right, we'll be back Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, to preview Wild Card Weekend. No longer Super. I cannot find any evidence of Super Wild Card Weekend on the NFL website. We have dropped the Super. Unofficially, it hasn't been announced. We have dropped the Super. So we'll give out our preview and picks for Wild Card Weekend Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Please subscribe to Stack in the Box on YouTube. Rate and review the audio version of this podcast. Thank you. Finally, in the last 5 seconds of the show, someone said it. 10B Kid says, nice sweater, Ian. Thank you. This is actually a very nice wool sweater. I was waiting for someone to compliment it. Sterling, final thought.
I like your sweater.
Doesn't count. You have to be first to compliment it or else it doesn't count.
I like your beard.
Thank you. All right. Talk to you Wednesday. Bye.